Bueno, nuestro siguiente expositor es el doctor Marcell Vollmer. Bienvenido, welcome to Perú. Voy a hablarles un poco del doctor Marcell. Fue recientemente socio director de Boston Consulting Group en Frankfurt, donde se centró en temas de transformación digital. También ocupó cargos importantes a nivel global en Celonis como director de innovación, donde apoyó equipo y a clientes, socios importantes en su viaje de transformación digital. La experiencia en transformación digital del doctor es muy importante. Y ha trabajado para SAP 15 años como director de SAP Ariba, donde impulsó estrategias de tecnologías de información cuyo objetivo era ayudar a empresas a eliminar la complejidad de la cadena de compras y suministro a través de soluciones software prácticas y sencillas, inteligentes y sobre todo abiertas en su forma de conceptualización. También fue director de adquisiciones de SAP, liderando a más de 200 profesionales que administraron miles de millones en volumen de gastos globales, y esto ayudó a crear y dirigió un equipo de servicios compartidos muy importantes en esta unidad. Y por último, pero no menos importante, el doctor Vollmer es considerado dentro del top 25 de líderes en inteligencia para las cosas por la CIIT y top 50 de Global Digital Influencers a seguir por la IPF Online. Demos la bienvenida al doctor Marcell Vollmer con un fuerte aplauso. Welcome, Marcell, to Perú.
Many thanks. Many thanks. I don't need it. I have this one, yeah. I do it in the digital way. Manuel, many thanks for the nice introduction. I heard a lot of importante, and I hope it was definitely great and much better than I ever could do it. So let's kick it off. So, buenos tardes, Lima. It works. Excellent, excellent. Isn't it great being back together?
Give me just a little bit.
Oh, sorry.
Por favor, si quieren los audífonos para escuchar el inglés, allí pueden recoger los auriculares sin ningún problema. It's for the translation, automatic translation. They need.
Okay. Well, awesome. Thank you. And I see the time has not started, so therefore, all good on that end. Thank you. I hope the translation works, and yeah. By that, I just wanted to say, and that's very important, in the future we might see something like that, the metaverse. I'm not exactly sure how this will turn out in the future, and if we really feel comfortable with these goggles walking around and doing some strange movements. So therefore I can say from my end, I'm very happy being here. I know it's a long trip, but also connecting with you, sitting together during lunch or in a coffee break. This is definitely great and much better than having a virtual event. I was here last year when we had the virtual one, not sure who of you was also attending. Who was attending, by the way, last year? Yeah, Joaquin? 3. And 2 are from, okay. No, this can't be. That's probably my my English skills or missing Spanish skills, I would say. So let's start right away by that, and I see they are tuning the time. For me, it's not the first time, the second time. I brought some pictures. The fun fact is that the top left, by the way, that's the other side of the hotel, the entrance with the red carpet. So was really great being here and also having lots of fun. And Mark, I couldn't agree more on the good food. So it is so amazing. I definitely enjoy it. What do I want to do? So I would like to cover 4 topics with you. A little bit talking about the global trends, what is currently on the agenda with all the supply chain challenges, procurement, what we have seen, talking a little bit about the disruptive technologies. It's tough to catch up with what Mark did. I don't want to say anything what he has already included in that, but I couldn't agree more, Mark, on what you said about artificial intelligence. There's a lot artificial in that and little intelligence. You have perfectly summarized that. And finally also, I want to share with you an example how a digital transformation to the next level, and let me call it bionic, integrating basically the technology side with us as humans. And Mark mentioned one thing very important. We should call it augmented, because this is exactly what it is. Augmenting our human capabilities with the technology we have access to, by also being very realistic, managing the expectations, what the technology can do. So let's start right away with the first one on the global trends. I don't need to say much about the black swan events. We might not have even considered that this can happen in such, I even would say, a magnitude. Now we see high energy costs, the Ukraine-Russian war. Pretty sure last time I was here in Lima, if I would have said, oh yeah, there might be really a shutdown, global travel will be discontinued, a pandemic might impact all of us, and probably there might be a war in Europe, you would definitely not let me again in this country, in this beautiful, because you think this guy must be crazy. Now in the meantime, we have learned a lot. What we have seen, the semiconductor crisis, one container ship basically can bring an entire supply chain between Europe and Asia to a standstill. There are much more topics, from regulatory requirements on sustainability, an important topic. I mentioned COVID, Fukushima. This was, by the way, the first experience of a crisis when I started my role as Chief Procurement Officer. Why was that? Basically, I learned that after the horrible event, I asked my team, I was heading the procurement function, are we impacted at SAP? Is it anything what might impact us as a company? Everyone said, no, we don't have any suppliers in the Fukushima area. I said, okay, sounds good. And this means we also don't have to be concerned so much about our supplies. Later on, I learned we only had transparency about the tier 1 suppliers, our direct suppliers. We haven't had any clue about the tier 2, tier 3 suppliers. So basically all the people where our suppliers were dependent on. And of course, there were some in the Fukushima area. So you see, these events can happen. And by the way, it's not so little. Therefore, I think we need to be prepared. The good news is, when we look at the global numbers, I know it's a busy slide, but we are at around 100 trillion US dollar on GDP, the gross domestic product. The largest portion is United States, as you can see, 1/4 of it. China catching up very fast. 19 trillion out of that, by the way, is the global trade. So basically what runs through the different supply chains. Brazil, one of the countries here in Latin America, is number 10 in that list. And the good news is we have potential to grow, to continue, which is definitely good for the economy. I heard that Peru is about 4% expected to grow. Not sure if the numbers were right, but Pablo did a great job by picking me up this morning at 4:20 at the airport and also giving me some background on Peru. On that. But what we also will see is a significant shift in our supply chains. And I've used one slide from my former time as partner at BCG, where we have analyzed a little bit what will happen and how will supply chains really be impacted until 2031. That's what you see here. The green one's basically really good. Basically, this means global trade will increase. By the way, you will get the presentation later on. There's one red one. In the meantime, it's pretty small. This is between United States and China, and of course Russia is also impacted by that. Due to the trade war, it is not a big surprise that the trade will go down. Fortunately, a little bit less than expected in the past. So what are the global trends now? What I promised you to share with. First of all, it's tough to make predictions, especially about the future. Was not me. Mark Twain was already in a nice picture. This morning, Winston Churchill, Niels Bohr. It's not exactly clear who was the first one who brought it up. But basically what I really like is the best way to predict the future is to create it. And that's what we are here for, what we can impact and where we can define the next steps on how to do it. Also not for me, Buckminster Fuller was saying that, very innovative man. Let me highlight 4 trends, what I would see. And not a big surprise. I studied economics, so the economic trends is number one, we see different speed in the world. Intra-Asia, Africa, very fast growing. Now 1 billion people, supposed to go up to 4 billion people in the future. So that's the reason also why China, for example, is investing a lot. I think we definitely need to see it. You here in Latin America, Brazil growing very fast and in the top 10 already in, but there's really speed also in the evolution. The urbanization of the megacities, but the megacities also have some impact on the next trends, the terror trends. Why is that? The infrastructure is getting impacted, and we need to see how to bring 10 million, 20 million people in one city, really in the right way organized, that we also can think about sustainability. How can we better take care of the water, of all the supplies, what is needed, but definitely also see that this is a place where we want to live, where we really enjoy, and hopefully the 2 degrees increase will become reality. I'm not so optimistic, but we have seen a great presentation earlier today about the targets, the Paris Agreement. I think there's no doubt there's a need. We need to see that we really get here to the next level. Technology trends, I will cover that. E-commerce, the mobile business, what we do now, presenting with smartphones, for example. The digitalization, big data analytics, something what is very important. But be careful about what you really do with the data. There's no scarcity on data, but the way how you use the data and how you really can get meaningful information out of that, ideally to the extent that we can talk about prescriptive data, getting really information about what someone can do based on the insights we have gained. Excuse me. Finally, the meta trends, demographic shifts. We see an aging population, China, Europe as well, and we see still also the uncertainty, where I mentioned some of the examples. So let's have a look now a little bit deeper on supply chain and procurement, and I keep it short. I also promise to give some minutes back, and let's see if this will become true. Supply chain for me is fairly simple. You see 4 words. It's plan, it is source, it is make, and it's deliver. Below that, of course, the processes are much more complex. I picked the example of source to pay. I'm most familiar with that, but we don't need to go too deep into that. What's currently really impacting us is how can we really go to the next level for our supply chains to leverage and benefit from the data we have for the digitalization, to ensure that when an event happens, like a ship gets stuck in the Suez Canal, to really understand and know, how am I impacted as my business? I had a call with the CPO from a large conglomeration in Germany, and it took him 3 hours to exactly know how many containers were on that ship, what was in the containers, and his team could start to work on the mitigation strategy. By the way, not for the containers on the ship which got stuck, already considering what are the other ships impacted coming from Asia, going or not going through the Suez Canal, and then on the other side also ships not going from the Mediterranean Sea now to Asia, what to do with them. And 3 hours, that's a pretty good time, and this is for me a great example also using the information what we have access to and really derive something meaningful out of it. Risk management, another topic, great example are these black swan events, and of course sustainability, what we are currently looking into, how to make it happen. Let me start with the first one very briefly. I mentioned already, bionic for me is the next level of the digitalization. It means really connecting and getting access to the technology and using it, that we as humans can augment our capabilities and bring both together. That's for me a beautiful example how we really can benefit from that. It might be machine learning, it might be artificial intelligence. ChatGPT has some great stuff, what it can do, but it's up to us to define the use cases. And I always advise clients, or now I'm in the healthcare business, to also provide transparency based on the data, what are the substitutes? We were really in a crisis during the pandemic, haven't had access to all the medical devices for patients in need. What is important in that situation? It is, first of all, are there substitutes in the market out there? Does not really help when others also impacted, and you might not get anything because most gets produced in Asia, and therefore we were all in the same situation when Shanghai was closed, and by that basically 90% of everything what comes out of China was no longer getting delivered. There are patients in need all over in the world, so therefore you better think about what you can do. Therefore, a second component is very important. Do we have access to the data of hospitals where they might have medical devices and equipment around? What other hospitals could use? I don't need to tell you, in healthcare, digitalization is not very far. It is not really that it works in a way that you just look on your smartphone and, oh yeah, there's one who has access to it and I call them or I basically text them and I get it next day. It's more a very manual process. But this shows really a beautiful example also how you can use the data and what you can do with that to enhance your capabilities. I think I mentioned enough about what one chip can do. If you would ask me if this is possible, one single chip in the Suez Canal, wow, was really impressive seeing that. Let me share one other example on sustainability. And by the way, what you see here, let me read it because it's pretty small. Pears grown in Argentina, packed in Thailand. I just brought it a little bit on a map. So you all know better than I do where Argentina is, Thailand on the other side. And by the way, this was found, that's a real example, in a supermarket in the United States. On the economic side, by the way, this makes perfectly sense. It was very cheap to ship pears from Argentina to Thailand, do the packaging, and send it back to the United States to sell them, that consumers have access to it in the supermarkets in retail. But the reason for that was, first of all, this was before the pandemic. The prices for shipping for a container went up from around $2,000 up to 20,000. This was a peak, close to 20,000. In the meantime, they are down to 8,000 to 6,000 now, when you look at that, but still 3 times more. What is not included, and therefore you see it here under sustainability, the CO2 price. This costs a lot of money, sending pears to the other side of the world when CO2 has a price. And as CO2 had no price in the past, of course, it was possible to do it, a very economic decision, but in the future probably these are things we really might consider to stop and to change because, come on, the labor costs here in Latin America are not so expensive that something like that is really from the economic side necessarily needed on that. So by summarizing what I just mentioned, bringing some insights from digitalization together with the sustainability aspect, with looking also in the risk mitigation what we do. Probably in the future we will see that what was before the pandemic and the crisis, the globalization, it will not stop. And I'm not here to tell you globalization will come to an end. That's nonsense. At least I don't believe it, and I don't have any data which would confirm this statement. But on the other side, we will see there will be a shift on leveraging a little bit more local capabilities from suppliers, as well as also considering now a CO2 price and other factors we need to simply include. And that's why I believe, and I haven't invented the term, but localization, combining the best from the globalization, the labor arbitrage, with the local aspects of sustainability, including the risk mitigation, brings this together, might change a little bit also how we in the future look at supply chain. So probably think global, act local might be something what we will see in the future more and more. And a professor, a good friend of mine for procurement and we are doing a survey together with ISM. So this is the Institute for Supply Chain Management in the United States, 50,000 members. We do a survey to see, is it really something we can confirm also on the data we started last year already? And there seems to be a trend that this goes in that direction, what I just described. Coming now and looking on some technologies. And when you look at technology, probably in the tech industry, and I would consider myself as a tech guy with more than 17 years in the tech industry. When we reach 50 million people, we talk about really adoption of an innovation. Airlines, 68 years, cars, 62 years, internet, iPod, YouTube 4 years, Facebook 3, Twitter 2 years, and now guess what? ChatGPT is on. It took 5 days for 1 million users and 1 month for 50 million users, 2 months for 100. So this really shows how fast the adoption goes and really how fast also one single technology can have impact and change something. And I'm not saying that this means that now ChatGPT will transform everything what we have seen. There's nothing to add on what Mark said. But basically what we see is there's a huge impact, and there's definitely also a technology piece out there which will have impact on our jobs. I'm not sure if it's a 300 million jobs, what the World Economy Forum said. And by the way, people very often get concerned about thinking, oh wow, what is this guy telling here? New technology, and probably more and more people are no longer needed due to certain automation. Let me give you an example on that. I was born 1970. Now you know how old I am. That's where the gray hair comes from. And when I was born, the access to technology, what I had was television got color. For the millennials here, this sounds now very strange what I'm telling you. But Mark, you might agree on that. You have seen it by yourself and some others. I see here the gray hair. I'm not the only one. The second, we had radio and the telephone. By the way, the telephone was not this, what I'm holding right now. There was something, a plastic box where you had to go for this, for 1 digit. Not for one number, for 1 digit. And by the way, if you make a mistake, there is no way to press return. You have to disconnect and start again. This was the technology. By the way, we were around 3.4 billion people on Earth. Last year, we hit 8 billion people. And look on the technology, what we have. I'm not saying the world is perfect, technology has solved everything. By far not. But I think it's fair to state that lots of new jobs got created, and I believe that also with ChatGPT and some other technology what we see right now, we will also create new jobs like app designer, people programming, coding, data analysts, data architects. There's really much more what we will see. And by the way, if this continues, hey, join the club and we can enjoy the augmented technology. That's my personal belief, and the good thing is I don't want to sell you anything. I'm not here for a company because, hey, I have a product and I want to invite you. This was in the past the case when I worked at SAP, but nowadays it's just basically sharing some insights and also probably food for thought that we can have a discussion, and also that you think about, hey, what's impacting you, what's really something which might excite you, which might concern you, and how to deal with that. So when we look now a little bit more on the technology, what we have access today and how we can use it. McKinsey did an analysis about what is the technology trend for this year. And I was very impressed about seeing the next level of process automation is the number one, and process visualization. I was certainly excited because I was a chief innovation officer at Celonis, a market leader, or basically the company who invented this business model, process mining, using analytical data and really showing what is inside a system. And I can tell you, if you not have seen it, even for me, I was more than 14 years at SAP, if you would have asked me, Marcell, what exactly is an ERP? I would definitely find words to describe it, but showing it like Celonis, a solution in process mining, can do it, that you see data flows, red dots going through a system and showing you where you have a diversion, where you have a friction, and basically at the end that the process ends and you have full transparency, full visibility in every single aspect. This was really exciting seeing. This is the #1 trend, what McKinsey summarized, what they see now impacting us. There's more. You see connectivity, the distributed infrastructure, and so on. So it is not limited to that, but basically what I always say is that putting a new system, and therefore I mentioned the process example, and this was the reason why it excited me so much. Putting a new system on an old process, you will have a shitty process with a new system. But the process is still not really good. Sorry for my French. Therefore, it is more a kind of bandage, what you put on top. And that's definitely something which is not the digital transformation. Pascal Bonnet, a good friend, on social media is saying that. He wrote a book about that, how to do it. Here's the example, by the way. Not sure if you can see it. The red dots are now going through the process flow. This is really something where technology can help you in a way. We could not do it on our own. We simply can't, first of all, look into an ERP system, and also we don't understand all the friction. But when you go out there and you talk about procurement, for example, or supply chain, you find lots of executives telling you, why does it take so long, and why is it so complex, and things like that, also so expensive. That's really something worth considering, looking on the end-to-end process side. But there's much more. The future of connectivity, I was impressed about seeing that in 2013 we had around 20 million smart sensors in use in supply chains. And for me, supply chain management was always a topic I was very much interested, because RFID, IoT, these technologies, now 5G, 6G in the future, we will definitely see a different level of transparency. And you know exactly in the future, your truck will not arrive in time, probably not because there is a hiccup on a highway or a traffic jam, what you have. You might even know this way before, when already a ship gets delayed or there might be bad weather, something like that. With all the connected devices, you have real-time information when you get something. This might be really a big change. And of course, I'm also a big fan, as you can see, on smartphone, but also on the consumer apps. These are all consumer apps, but it's amazing also seeing that these apps, and probably you have used some of them, whatever, that they are really also impacting the way how we do business. Now with Google Maps, who is reading a map, by the way? We are asking Siri or starting Google Maps on, hey, how to get from A to B. I use Siri, by the way, also to do my entire emails. It does not work perfectly in English. That's my bad accent. I lived 3 years in Atlanta, Georgia, in the United States. You see, I successfully failed to get rid of my German accent. Sorry for that. I tried hard and failed on that. But Siri is catching up and is also getting better on that. This is also great seeing how we can make use. By the way, these are for me cases where there's a lot of machine learning in. And by the way, artificial intelligence is a term for the bigger chunk. Machine learning is a subset of that, and deep learning a subset of that, where you really can make use of the data. So let me come to the last topic, how to really do a transformation and go to the next level. When you ask people, where do you want to be? Of course, everyone tells you, hey, I want to have, in the past it was competitive advantage, value was one term which was used. In the past, people were happy to get transactional support, some excellence, and really starting with some cross-functional insights. Nowadays, everyone wants to be digitally empowered and being really business partner, leveraging also the right level of that. I use Bionic, as mentioned, to really augment and combine it. What's interesting sometimes is when you do a reality check in companies, and supply chain procurement probably is sometimes a good topic on that, and you ask, hey, we all know that procurement spend accounts for about 60% on average for the total cost. When you ask then what is the time spent a CEO is investing in suppliers, it is 1%. It's kind of interesting seeing that 60% of the cost base, and I know you're not so much into procurement like me, but basically I was really impressed about seeing the delta between these two numbers. And I was also impressed seeing when you focus on a function and you have on a C-level function someone driving procurement supply chain management and you compare the performance, it is 34% better than compared to other companies not having these executives for procurement supply chain on a senior level. Probably you can confirm or want to discuss or argue on that. This is a survey what BCG did and which was very impressive seeing the difference. So how do we transform really a business function? We all know we had operational processes, bureaucracy, old systems, still paper-based. I'm in healthcare now, I can tell you what I have seen. And Mark, by the way, one of the most shocking examples was my trip to Sydney when I was in a hospital there. I will not tell the name, no worries about. But basically, one former employee from that hospital was now in my team and showed me around in that hospital. We went in the OR and there was a folder. By the way, this was a plastic folder with paper inside. There was her handwriting was still on that folder. By the way, that's a folder which is actually since more than 1 year in an OR. I was asking a little bit of question, how does it really work with the getting this sterile and things like that? Then I learned about 3 zones in an OR, and that was the reason why I was allowed to go in and so on. But there is still paper around. I'm pretty sure you don't want to rely on paper and think about what can happen if there's a mistake on that paper. So therefore, I hope this will be the past very soon. It is not as of today. And in the future, we will see how we really have roles, and I've used the role as Chief Procurement Officer here, evolving. And probably a picture like that, a young woman is sitting next to a robot, might be something. It will never happen, by the way, in that way, like it showed here. This picture is nuts. Honestly. And by the way, I have also not said that she is a CPO. So that's also something worth thinking about. So how to start really a transformation? And I thought, and this is my final, give me 2 more minutes before we then close it, how a transformation really works and how to make it happen. And I used an example I was accountable for and was driving with my team. But I learned a few things, not because this was my first transformation. I was fortunate that I was already working with consultants and got a lot of expertise from very senior people, my time and my career. But starting with a vision, what do you really want to achieve makes perfectly sense. And then looking at the next step. Number 1, first on the process, and this means the user. What is the user experience? This is where the process starts. And looking from that angle, defining then the organizational setup, how to bring the people together. What is it what they do first? Doesn't matter. If you talk about customers who engage with you, that's the reason why Amazon, Alibaba, companies like that are very successful. Mercado Libre would be one I would mention here in Latin America. And then defining the organizational setup. And after that looking, what are now the right systems, what we can use. Interestingly, and I speak to you as a former senior executive on the SAP side, I can tell you that I had lots of discussions starting exactly upside down. They bought SAP as a system, and then they said, hey guys, we have now this beautiful system. I will show you in a minute how beautiful it is. Give me one more minute on that. And then let's see that we make the organization and the people fit to that. I see some are agreeing exactly. That's not really the way. And by the way, the most important thing in my mind is the people aspect. Let's not forget them, because this is absolutely key that you bring your people on the same page. And showing you an example, I promised one nice picture. This was, by the way, the setup of the procurement organization when I became Chief Procurement Officer. On the left side, you see very advanced technologies. Some of you might have seen the latest, greatest, what you can get from a Microsoft Office package, including email, Word, PowerPoint, Excel. This was really the foundational work for all the strategic work done. In the middle, not sure who has seen this picture before. It's honestly, the resolution is not very great what I see here, but that's an old SAP R3 system. By the way, to start this system and to get to the right task you want to perform, you needed a 4-digit transaction code. For people now here, and I see a lot of millennials, they might now really think this guy is very strange. How is this possible to work? This was a reality in the past. And by the way, then you see here also very complex processes behind that. So that's fortunately also no longer the case. And we were looking into all the different hiccups with manual processes, lots of signatures, papers, by the way, also contracts you could not find. Looking into that, what is really the latest, greatest, and also how to apply that. We have transformed and used some of the systems. I'm not here for SAP, so therefore I skip this very fast, but basically introduce the different systems to come to something, and that's really what I'm proud to show and where I believe the future is. And by the way, whatever the logos are, having an app, performing a process, making it, and I always say, make it Apple easy and Google fast. If you perform that, beautiful. By the way, it doesn't matter if you talk about procurement, supply chain, if you talk about back office function, HR, finance, IT, whatever, or if you talk about also sales, the frontline, marketing, engaging with your customers. For customers, you're only successful if you have something like that. That's my belief, to make it really easy. And I think as a business, we are now at an inflection point. It's up to us to define the future. And of course, it is also up to us to see how do we use and how do we leverage these disruptive technologies for our processes. I always want to use the user example, what I have shown on the slide with the vision, that we should focus whatever we do. Do we have really impact on the users? Do we make something better? Is it easier for them? And then can we leverage technology? And if this has a positive business case, because using technology because it's nice to have is also a thing I would not recommend. But basically, if we have a use case, have impact, we will be successful in the future, and hopefully also all your businesses in the mining industry and wherever you are in that journey might be also in the future very successful by coping with the current challenges what we have, and the challenges will change, but there will definitely some, and I like to turn it into opportunities by leveraging what we have. With that, thank you very much, and hopefully we have some time, and I gave you the time back. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. We have some time for questions. So questions will arrive up there.
Oh, that's a good one, yeah. How do you think that sustainability should be introduced in work processes today? I love this question because this is really what, first of all, we need to do. We need to think about, do we integrate sustainability aspects and do we take it serious? Or is it more that we say, oh, by the way, we also focus on sustainability and we put a report out, and you might have heard the term greenwashing. What was that? It was basically more looking into aspects, how can we now also show to the outside world that we are sustainable, we focus on things like that. The proof for me comes always, is it integrated in a process? For example, if you have a supplier code of conduct in place, that you focus on sustainability, meaning also ESG, environmental, social, governmental objectives, that you really include that and say, yes, if a company has a higher standard for the labor. No one wants to have child labor in the processes, in the goods what you procure, because your consumers might stop buying them, and by that you run out of business. Therefore, you need really to integrate it and say, I make it mandatory, and I really want to include this in my purchasing process, in my buying decisions, what I want to do. If it's not included, I can tell you, you might have goals, but how do you want to really bring this to the level that you execute on them? How do you really want to drive CO2 reduction? And this only works when you have a very clearly defined process, and it starts again with the data. I was doing lots of projects by sitting with senior executives together, CEOs, CPOs, Chief Supply Chain Officer, and basically they simply told me, Marcell, we don't have the data. We even can't measure now our CO2 footprint. And this is what's all about, the Scope 3. That's how it called. Scope 1 and 2 is what a company is producing as greenhouse gas, as CO2 for their operations. And Scope 3 is on the incoming side, what suppliers basically deliver to you, that you can run your operations, and on the outgoing side, what you have in your distribution, in your logistic. And therefore, I believe you need to make it part of the process, and you need to define goals. What measures gets done was not me, was Jack Welch saying that. That's definitely something, but it needs to start from the C-level, that they really want to execute on that. I have not seen one single example. Happy to discuss it later today, tomorrow, when you have different examples on that, but really make it part of your decision and integrate it also in your buying behavior, but also for your consumers. Make it transparent, because consumers will only buy the goods in the future when they have the certainty that you take it serious, and also that your numbers are right, and that you really focus on sustainability goals. Other questions?
Muy bien. Si hay más preguntas, pues a través de la plataforma pueden hacerlas llegar. If not, well, Dr. Marcell, it was really a pleasure. You really influenced our people today. But thank you very much for coming here, and welcome to Peru. And come here again, please. Okay. Palmas para.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, Maria.